University of Maryland students, and so hopefully this performance by BDD is enough to give him the motivation he needs to come out to Baltimore at least.
I believe we call them the Brockefellers.
The Brockefellers.
Yes. Take a look at the opening hand here. Shrout's got a couple of copies of Experiment 1. Doesn't look like he has a ton of lands. Got 2 planes. Yeah, I don't think he has any green mana there. Would be a risky key.
Yeah.
And he does have the option to go first here, so I think, yeah, I had a feeling he was going to send this back. So
Yep.
first mulligan here as Brian is going to keep his opening 7. Again, our other matchup, Owen Turtenwald, our 4th seed, Dan Cato, our 8th seed. So as we do find out what's going on there, or if we do have time to cut over to that one, we will certainly do that. But for right now, we stick here with Shrout versus Braun-Duin.
These 2 mana bases, shades of Mercadian Masks block constructed.
Ugh,
a lot of basic lands of both colors in both of these decks.
Now, Masks had Port, right? But
Briefly, it was banned after the Pro
banned
Tour.
in block, yeah, because it was too good.
And miserable.
Well, it depends on your definition of miserable. I think Port is a lot of fun.
I mean, I guess if you believe that fun is zero sum, and that
Which
someone's fun comes at the expense of someone else's happiness, then everything is kind of fun, right?
You found my definition of fun.
Right. So
Yeah.
by that, there's a lot of things that are fun.
Port you don't get to play spells. Ha ha. That's why I also like Tanglewire and Winter Orb. I'm that guy.
Yeah.
Braids Cabal Minion. Smoke Stack. Armageddon. Quick question. Armageddon at white, white, white. Okay, white, 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 white. Principal or no?
I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. It may not be a huge player in Tier 1 if the mana cost is prohibitive enough, but it's still, if it's being cast, games are less fun, so why would you bother?
I'm just asking. It's less fun for one player. That's for sure.
Well, tournament attendance is different from format to format, even though every match still has a winner and a loser. So how we get to the winner and loser matters. Like we've identified that this is a thing.
That's true.
So
I just really want to cast Armageddon. I don't know what's the big deal. Temple Garden is going to start here for Shrout. Brian's going to start off with a Temple.
I think it's generally more fun if your opponent gets to cast their spells and you beat them anyway. But
yeah, we have wildly different definitions of fun. Here's a Voice of Resurgence from Shrout and Best of Turn back. So a pretty good mulligan to start. There's a 4. So Brian with no acceleration. We've seen this when we watch Brian and when we watch CVM as well. So they have had some hands where they just don't accelerate very well. And I think this is a matchup of many where it's very important to get some acceleration going, get ahead of the opponent before Advent of the Worm and other things come online.
Yeah, Andrew definitely has a couple ways to, get an early advantage and then be able to squeeze out the final point. So the speed matters a lot.
Boone Sater's going to get played here
Boom.
by BBD. 4-2, so it can trade. I put trade in quotes with the Voice of Resurgence. See Shrout right now. He's got a Banisher Priest in his hand, Experiment 1. He's got his 4th land as well. Voice of Resurgence is going to come into the red zone. In this matchup, I think you're much more happy to have the Elemental token than Voice itself.
Yes.
As that's going to be a bigger creature a lot of the time.
Yeah. Brian's deck now with a ton of removal, so easy for the board to get gummed up and then for that Elemental token to be a real threat in play.
You see Boone Sater, the enchantment creature from Theros. Arguably the best creature with Bestow in the set, I think.
I would say so. 2 good deals.
Yeah, good design, too. I like everything about this card.
Nice, simple, clean. It's good rare.
Gorkline Rampager is going to come into play, but it's going to get trumped immediately by an Advent of the Worm. So the 5/5 flash creature is in. Mistcutter Hydra is going to come off the top here for Shrout. Not at its best in this matchup, but not terrible either. If Shrout does start to float out a little bit, he's got something to do with that mana. He's going to play an Experiment 1 to start things off, which feels like to me we're going to see a Banisher Priest follow that up so that he can evolve Experiment 1, but more importantly, get that Rampager off the table.
Yeah, Mistcutter Hydra is certainly not for this matchup specifically, but Andrew is the beatdown deck in the matchup.
Yes.
And it's incumbent on him, to get ahead, and Mistcutter Hydra is something that can finish off a game once he gets out in front enough.
See, Braun-Duin is already down to 9. He's got a Boone Sater out there that's not really doing very much. And as good of a card as Boone Sater is, it's not particularly great as a defender.
It has neither attacked nor blocked this game thus far, so it's struggled to make much of an impact.
Flesh Blood, going to target and take care of that Banisher Priest. Going to get the Gorkline Rampager back as well. So good use of the rarely used split card there by Braun-Duin. He's going to follow that up with a Domri, so a little fight action. He's catching up quickly.
Yep. This was a really critical turn. Brian basically needed to play 2 spells at some point to catch up here, and now he's starting to make some inroads here.
There's a fight there between the Rampager and the Experiment 1, which Rampager predictably wins. So Shrout's hand right now, he's got a Selesnya Charm, which is an important card in this matchup, and he has that Mistcutter Hydra. And we'll see what he drew for the turn. It is a copy of Boon Satyr. And now it's time to go into a familiar place we call the tank.
I mean, Andrew now is in a good spot here with that Boon Satyr draw. Both as additional pressure, and it means that a land or spell going forward is a good draw for him. 5th land helps a lot with both Boon Satyr and Mistcutter Hydra, so.
Now he's trying to figure out what's the best way that I can use out of this Selesnya Charm. Do I need to attack Domri or not? Does Mistcutter Hydra really have a role in this game? I think Mistcutter Hydra really starts to turn on once he has 5 lands, so it can be a 4-4. As a 3-3 right now, it's really not all that impressive. Advent of the Worm going to come in attacking Domri, and I think, yeah, we're going to see a double block here. Now, he can turn Advent into a 7-7, and then it will actually trample over to take care of Domri. So it's a 3 for 2, but that's a good exchange there. Well, I feel like that's a good exchange.
Brian's got to be happy, you know. The more time that he has, the more that he can start casting his Storm Breath Dragon type threats and you know, stabilize the game. His draw steps are higher impact, so he's happy to make, you know, card economy exchanges like that to preserve his life total at this point.
Speak of the devil, and it shall appear. Stormbreath Dragon is in Brian's hand right now. Don't know if he's going to deploy that or not, but he is on the back foot here, so if he does deploy a dragon, I wouldn't be surprised to see it stay on defense.
Yeah, I like holding the fort here and waiting for more high impact draws before racing.
Yeah, and he does have some really, really high impact draws at this point. Didn't mention, we talked about Stormbreath Dragon. Domri's not a bad draw. Xenagos is okay. Gyrocaller Beast can really turn a game around. Pelugrinos can do the same. And Stomping Ground's going to come and play tapped, and Dragon's just going to get in play and play defense. Now, there's a big draw there for Shrout. There is the land that we did mention. Now, here's Mistcutter Hydra. That's going to be a 4-4. And now does the Dragon want to trade? Because I think that Brian just has 2 lands in his hand.
It's hard to take this hit, because what are you planning on doing next turn?
Yeah, really, really difficult. I mean, it's interesting because, like, I think Brian's thought process is, well, I get to play my 7th land next turn, I get to Monstrosity my Dragon, it becomes a 7-7, so I'm in a pretty good spot, and maybe you can't attack, but that's not necessarily true. You do see Stormbreath Dragon there. Powerful card, but chose not to block last turn.
I mean, you know, I understand to some extent that, you know, he already needs to draw something big to stabilize this game anyway, and he's probably better. If that's the case, if the top of his deck needs to be live anyway, he's probably better off with the Dragon in play. But you know, you have a reasonable suspicion the last card in his hand is a land because he missed a land drop last turn, played Mistcutter this turn, and this board plus a spell is pretty challenging to beat, I feel like.
And we know that Shrout does have a spell in his hand, and it's actually one of the best ones that he can have because he has a copy of Boon Satyr in his hand. And you can see, I think, not to say that Boon Satyr is bad in Braun-Duin's deck, because it's obviously not, but you can see just how good it is in a green-white deck. As Shrout is going to untap, he's going to take a draw. Draw step will fire off the Monstrosity activation, so he gets the extra point of damage. However, Shrout can respond by bestowing, but he'll just bestow now on the Voice of Resurgence, and that is going to end the game. So, Andrew Shrout is going to win game number 1 here with his green-white aggro deck over Brian Braun-Duin, green-red and monsters. Green-white up a game. We'll see how Turtenwald and Kato are doing just as soon as we find out, but for right now, we're going to bring it back to the booth because it is trivia time. 6 months of premium this go around. Get your Twitters ready. Hashtag SCG Premium. I'm going to fire away this time if that's okay.
Yeah, be my guest.
You give me the green light? That's very, very nice.
All you.
So, within Andrew Shrout's deck, he's got a whole bunch of 4-ofs. Then he has a 3-of and he has a 2-of. And these cards that he has that are 3-of and 2-of have protection from blue. Now, I don't want you to name the 3-of. I want you to name the 2-of in his deck that does have protection from blue. And if you can name that card, tweet at us, hashtag SCG Premium. Again, Andrew Shrout's deck does have a 2-of in his deck that does have protection from blue. And if you can name that card, hashtag SCG Premium, we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our semifinal round. Winner will get 6 months of premium. So again, it's about accuracy, not speed, as we make our way over to the sideboard. BBD is where we're going to start. 2 Chandras, 2 Mizium Mortars, 4 Mistcutter Hydras, 2 Shocks, 2 Plummets, 2 Destructive Revelries, and a Rook Thar. I think the easiest place to start, honestly, is the Mizium Mortars, but from there it gets a little bit more muddy.
I like the Shocks. I think that Brian's got to be really conscious about what the first couple turns of the game look like.
Hmm.
You saw that game, Brian, he did plenty of powerful stuff, but
Agreed.
Andrew just kind of got the ball rolling early, was able to push through enough damage, and then had enough tricks to finish out the game. That's kind of Andrew's game plan. So even if Shock doesn't have a ton of targets, I think it's worth having just to shore up your early game. The fact that it also kills Banisher Priest, which is one of Andrew's best cards in the matchup, I think puts us over the top. So I would just bring in the additional removal spells.
Other than that, I mean, Challenger's a little bit slow. Muscular Hydra, obviously not for this particular matchup, even though it can be a big creature, and we saw that it was good for Shrout in that game, and Brian can actually accelerate to one. So maybe that one's better than it may appear. Plummet, not so much. Revelry, not so much. And Rook Thar, more for your blue-white control decks as we move over to Mr. Shrout's sideboard.
3 copies of Unflinching Courage. I'm willing to bet if you had to make a list of the cards that Brian and CVN did not want to play against in this tournament, Unflinching Courage would be very near the top. It's pretty hard for Brian to get out of it with removal. It almost forces his hand to bring in Destructive Revelries that are pretty bad otherwise. I don't know if he wants to have 2 copies of Pelukrinos. I assumed yesterday when I was watching Andrew in action that you would just have it here because it's a green creature mirror. Pelukrinos is a big body. Brian has a couple mana elves and Scavenging Ooze type cards that Pelukrinos can catch. But after watching the games play out a little more, I think Andrew's edge is in speed and efficiency. He can't out-muscle Brian's deck, but he can be much faster and leaner. And so now I question myself whether or not he's supposed to be bringing in Pelukrinos, but Unflinching Courage is, among the better cards that you can have against green-red.
Watching the previous match here between Shrout and Van Meter from yesterday, where this was the exact same matchup, of course, the games that Shrout won, and he won that match 2-1. The games that he won, he just rolled over Chris really, really quickly, and Chris was never able to get his footing, and that's how the game ended. The game that Chris won, he barely held on with a Stormbreath Dragon that had to go monstrous and attack over 2 turns, and Shrout actually had live draws on the last turn to win the game. So Shrout is the aggressor in this matchup, and it seems like the Grand Monsters deck doesn't play defense very well against some of the things that Shrout is doing. So if you're Brian again, it really does come down to mana acceleration and getting out in front of the opponent before they can do anything.
Yeah, and the early removal is also critical for that game plan as well. Just, that game, Brian did flood out a little bit, granted, but
Agreed.
he still, it was challenging for him to play as efficiently as Andrew was. That was the real struggle. It's not for a lack of power. Brian's got far more powerful cards in his deck, and they're not even that expensive. I mean, he's got 3 and 4 and 5 mana impactful cards, but it's just the early turns of the game, if Andrew's able to get ahead on the board, he has enough tricks and pump spells and removal and Banisher Priest to just barely squeak through 20 points of damage, which is exactly what we saw in that first game.
I mean, the one card that seems to just continuously play a huge role in this matchup every time we have watched the games played is Advent of the Worm.
Oh,
it's just so big.
It is really powerful, contorts Brian's play, prevents him from racing. There's a multitude of things.
And it's really interesting, too, because, when Shrout passes the turn with 4 mana, it's like, oh, all right, 5/5, that's expected on turn 4 if you pass with 4 mana up. But even though that the 5/5 is coming, it doesn't make it any less of a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the unique thing about it.
Another sideboard card that I want to talk about really quick is Rootborn Defenses. We saw Andrew on camera go to this the other day against Red-Green, and it's obviously very good with Advent of the Worm if you ever draw those in concert. It's a very good answer to an overloaded Mizium Mortars, and these games often stall out and become about trying to slog through the ground at times. And Rootborn Defenses gives Andrew a lot of flexibility in how he can Alpha Strike. So we saw that card come in yesterday, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it come in again.
All right, well, the Chargers fans on your left. BBD, I'm not sure what football team he's a fan of, but he is on your right. And Shrout, again, up a game right now. Green Monsters versus Green-White Aggro. 2 decks that coming into this tournament you may not have thought of as major players, but I think Shrout has really put this deck on the map as, hey, this is a serious deck. My Invitational top 8 was no fluke. Yes, my deck list looked a little bit wonky with main deck pro-blue creatures and so many Banisher Priests in the main deck and no Smiters, which is something you've talked about at length. But, hey, I like my configuration. He plays a lot of Magic Online. Doesn't surprise me that he's come to a configuration that's winning for him, and the deck does look impressive.
I mean, the real question mark is what's the opportunity cost of playing these pro-blue creatures? They're obviously incredible against Mono Blue Devotion. How bad are they in other matchups? And their cost is fairly low. I mean, Mistcutter Hydra is, still a reasonably sized haste creature. Skylasher is another tricky combat trick type of type of card. They're not terrible in other games,
Yep.
and against Mono Blue, they're total haymakers.
Yeah, they're so good in that matchup, and I think a good spot to be in, obviously, is to having a good matchup against Mono Blue. Shrout is going to send it back here. Don't forget, Shrout did mulligan the last game too.
Yep.
I mean, came, crashing the gates down, was able to win pretty easily that game.
Yep. I mean, it's about the curve more than it is about having raw card count.
So BBD looks like he's going to keep his hand again. Command acceleration is key, I think, for Brian on his side. Got to see an Elvish Mystic. Got to see a Sylvan Caryatid.
Or removal. Removal can also take the place of mana acceleration in these games. It's just about keeping his head above water for the first couple turns of the game and getting to deploy his more powerful threats.
So Shock, Mizzy, and Mortars, cards that he's looking for here.
Things that allow him to essentially get to his third and fourth turns faster, or things that allow him to get to the third and fourth turn with a more stable board.
So Shrout going to try 6 cards yet again. We'll see how things do go here.
Brian, again, one of Star City Games' up-and-coming writers and content producers, and putting up a lot of results in tournaments recently.
BBD is a killer writer.
Yep.
He is an absolutely fantastic writer. I know every time I get an email in my inbox from him when I'm editing articles for the day, I get real excited. I can't wait to see what he's going to do next. A lot of puns, a lot of fun, but also a lot of strategy in there, too.
Cares about his craft.
Shrout's hand doesn't look so great.
3 basic forests and 3 white cards.
He's going to keep. And there is mana acceleration in the form of Elvish Mystic. And a Banisher Priest rolls off the top here for Shrout. So we might move to a third one kind of quick here.
Yeah, this could, if there isn't a Temple Garden or a Basic Plains in the next draw step or two, this could be a real fast one.
Elvish Mystic feeling a little bit frisky. There's his friend. There's a Stomping Ground past the turn back. So this is the kind of draw that I think Brian, obviously he wants, but this is the kind of draw that he wants when he's on the draw.
Yeah.
Not so much when he's on the play. Obviously, it's great when you're on the play. You really get to leverage your advantage, but this is the kind of draw that lets him catch up when he's getting beaten down by Soldier of the Pantheon, Experiment 1, and friends, that he can actually keep pace with Andrew.
Yeah. Reasonable chance this game Andrew could actually get just beaten to death by elves.
I think it's a very high likelihood, as there's a Gore Clan Rampager on turn 3 from Braun-Duin. Temple Garden rolls off the top there for Shrout, so it looks like he's going to get to play some magic here. He's got an Unflinching Courage, Celestia Charm, a Banisher Priest in the grip. His hand has been turned on a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he can go Celestia Charm, untap, Unflinching Courage it. That's something.
And there is Temple Guard, going to come to play untapped. And he's just going to pass the turn back, so this is a high. I have a Celestia Charm at the very least. Could also be a Boon Satyr, obviously. I think Brian can figure out the range of cards that Shrout can have on this turn as Gore Clan Rampager going to come into the red zone, put Shrout down to 13. BBD is going to play a Temple of Abandon, put the top card to the bottom, and we'll see if he does have a follow-up play this turn. The answer is yes, in the form of another 4/4 Trampler. Shrout, is it time to cast that Celestia Charm?
I can understand him not wanting to do it because it's pretty low impact this turn. But it's hard, at this point, he's so far behind on the board that I don't think he can just afford to not be spending his mana on the third turn.
I agree, especially after taking 2 as well, because he could have just put that card into play tapped. Now he's just going to pass the turn back. So now he is representing Advent of the Worm right now, which is certainly good, but it's almost like he took 2 points of damage almost for no reason.
Well, I think you want to have the flexibility to play the Celestia Charm to prevent the elves from attacking. Maybe Brian messes up. And also right now he gets to try to set up Advent of the Worm plus Unflinching Courage the following turn. I still feel like I would have played this Celestia Charm just I'm worried about, if I'm in Andrew's spot, I'm just kind of worried about dying with cards in my hand.
Yeah.
But it would be a fairly low impact play that turn.
So Brian, going to go to the tank here. Try to put Andrew on a range of cards yet again of, okay, you played Temple Garden untapped last turn and then you didn't use it, so why on earth did you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me.
And that would have been a good spot to play a Boon Satyr too, because there was a 4/4 attacking him. So it is a puzzling set of turns that Andrew's just laid out for Brian.
So let's see exactly what's going to happen. Everyone's going to come into the red zone here for BBD. I think it's a 5/5 instant speed worm time here for Andrew.
Well, this attack represents perhaps another Rampager, perhaps Mizzy and Mortars, And Andrew, at this point, has played this entire game trying to get Unflinching Courage onto his Worm token. So blocking in this spot, if you believe Brian has anything to finish off the Worm, is pretty rough.
I mean, it might be a situation where Shrout just has to hope that, Braun-Duin doesn't have anything. If that's the only way they can get back in the game, is just hope that those cards in his hand are just basically lands and, cross your fingers and kind of hope for the best. We might be in that situation here. The Advent of the Worm is going to get cast right now. Worm token is going to go in front of the Rampager. 6 damage is going to be dealt, put Shrout down to 7. And that's amazing more to take care of the Worm. And passing the turn back. So a draw step here from Shrout. See what he finds. It's a Plains, which isn't so bad.
Plains is really important here as Andrew really needs to start casting multiple white spells in his turns. For example, this turn he can play Banisher Priest on the 4/4. He can also play Fleece Mainline and put Unflinching Courage on it and say go. A couple really good turns.
Fleece Mainline with the Courage on it is a 5/5, so it's out of Mortar's range, which is really good.
And you know that there's no Rampager, as that would have happened last turn. So
Shrout's not out of this one yet. That Plains with a big draw.
that Plains was big.
Big draw there.
Turns on his Banisher Priest and allows him to cast multiple spells a turn. Shrout really going through the permutations of his turns here. At this point, it's a question of what do you believe the last card in Brian's hand could be.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think the play that I like the most is Fleece Mainline plus Unflinching Courage. But he's also going to consider just Fleece Mainline plus Selesnya Charm.
Yes.
Quick update for you guys on the Turtenwald versus Kato match. They're in game number 3. Mizzy Mortars is going to target this Fleece Mainline. Selesnya Charm, I think, is going to try to save it, and it is. So it's going to become a 5/5 now. There's a Domri. That's going to allow Shrout. That's going to allow, Braun-Duin to fight. So a good turn there from BBD. He's
Absolutely.
handless now, but he's ahead on the board.
Well, now we can play a Banisher Priest on the Rampager and hope to fade some draws.
Yeah.
And then we can get Unflinching Courage on it.
And turn it around. Yeah, let's take a draw step. That's a miss. Going up. Look here. Miss.
That's another
miss.
I mean, this Unflinching Courage takes care of Domri. It's a big swing in the life total.
Yep.
I mean,
Shrout has made it out alive. And he just drew an Advent of the Worm.
Wow.
Now, I still think you're going to Unflinching Courage this turn because you want to get your head above water, and you know the top card of Brian's deck is a blank.
It could be a Mortars or a Planeswalker or something, but at this point, I think the upside is so big of getting that Domri off the table.
I think that actually might be 2 copies of Unflinching Courage in Shrout's hand. I think it's Courage, and Advent of the Worm. We know for sure there's a Courage. You guys can see that at home. Yeah, double Unflinching Courage is what he's going to do, and he says tag that. So 6/6 Lifelinker. Shrout's going to go up to 8. There goes the Domri, and Brian's top card is not especially good. And all of a sudden, Shrout has made it out alive of this game.
And not only is he out alive, but he's actually drawing fairly slim to this. You could play a Stormbreath Dragon to have a pro-white blocker, but the rest of his deck provides very little defense against this. We talked about this during the sideboarding. Unflinching Courage, if you had to make a list of the cards that Brian and Chris did not want to play against this weekend, I think Unflinching Courage would be very near the top of the list.
I would 100% agree with you. As Brian has drawn his card, he's going to attack for 1. He's going to put Shrout down to 7. He's going to play a land and pass the turn back, and he knows he's in trouble now. As Shrout's going to draw his card, immediately attack for 6. He's going to go up to 13. Braun-Duin's going to go down to 14. And as you mentioned, the problem here is that's a 6 toughness creature.
Yep. Out of Mortar's range, any range, really.
Shrout just quickly draws his card and passes the turn back. And, when you're playing against a typical green-white deck, you think, okay, well, he just drew a land, he passed the turn back, so it's not a big deal. But when you're playing against green-white right now in our standard format, that represents so many different things. And what it does represent is that 5/5 Flash Worm, which is a nightmare here for Brian. Advent of the Worm is going to resolve. Shrout's going to confidently untap with a 6/6 Trampling Lifelinker and a 5/5. He has another copy of Advent in his hand. And, yeah, I would attack too if I was Shrout. Going to put Braun-Duin down to 8. Shrout's going to move up to 19, I believe, and how things have changed.
I mean, this game was another mulligan from Shrout. He started off on Forest, untapped Temple Guard, and nothing. That was the start of his game, and now we're here.
There's a Scavenging Ooze. Now,
That's not bad.
that's not bad. That's a card that can turn things around.
I mean, I don't know if there's 5 creatures between all the graveyards. That's the critical thing here.
That's not a bad draw at all. Wow. Because that can turn into a 7/7 and brick all of Shrout's stuffs. Wow. Around and around we go. Advent of the Worm on the end step here from Shrout. Now, of course, Shrout does have some redraws here that really just turn this around. Banisher Priest, there's a bevy of cards that he can actually draw here. It looks like he's drawn a Boon Satyr.
Yeah, that's one of those draws.
Yeah.
Because that Scavenging Ooze has to block this turn, and
Yeah, he had to have that on this turn.
Yep.
That was huge.
he had a couple draws. Banisher Priest, Celestia Charm. You know, there's other things as well, but
You see Brian trying to figure out, okay, where do I block? How do I block? What's the game plan here? Boon Satyr. I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, Boon Satyr is one of the better ones. You can argue which one's better. Boon Satyr, Celestia Charm. They're both great.
yeah.
You know. Banisher Priest similarly good. Brian's gonna say, all right, in front of here, gonna activate Scavenging Ooze. Give me that Fleece main line. Gonna gain a life, go up to 9. Gonna start eating some of the cards in his graveyard now too. There goes the Mystic. There goes the other Mystic. There goes the Rampager. So the Ooze is actually going to turn into a 6/6 here. And what seemed like a great turn for Brian. And it's actually going to turn into a 7/7. This Boon Satyr blows this bad boy right up. Yeah, and so there is the bestow on the Boon Satyr. And all Brian can do is shrug his shoulders and say, man, I just wish he didn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no Boon Satyr there, then suddenly Domri's a live draw, and you know, the game proceeds. But
so the Worm Token's going to die. The Boon Satyr's going to come in because of damage and all of that stuff. Shrout's going to gain some life. You see the life totals at 25 to 5. I'm trying to think of what the best draw here is for BBD. As he draws a card, it's a Storm Breath Dragon.
But this is still between Trample and the Boon Satyr. This is still lethal coming across.
Yep. Block there. 4, and that is going to do it. Andrew Shrout, in what looked to be an absolutely terrible game number 2, wins this match over Brian Braun-Duin. He's going on to the finals to face the winner of Owen Turtenwald and Dan Cato. Green-white aggro, one of the best decks coming into this format. Craig Wesco's Pro Tour win at Pro Tour Dragon's Maze. More people were wondering, why aren't people playing these cards? These cards are definitely powerful. Well, if you're a green-white fan, this is where you want to be.
And I mean,